Nice. I'll have to watch what I say now. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about some story techniques. I have written out one pager that I'll email out after with some stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to hear some stories. And I asked some people, and they're in the hat here. I asked people to create a story, or not create, to write a story on something that wasn't something they were necessarily working on right now. So that way, if we talk about it and give feedback on how to make it even better, people won't feel too precious about it. They won't go, I spent hours and hours working on this story, and how dare you? So, no, initially we had, Pat gave me 5 names, I believe. Is there anyone else who got that assignment from Pat who forgot to let her know that you want to participate in this? Nope, just the 5.
Who are the five?
The 5 are, I have to take them out of the hat.
Well, I can tell
Uh,
you. It's
okay,
Cynthia, Lori, Val, Marcia, and me.
anyone else go, wait a minute, I was working on one, I could probably fake it. Cool. So I'm just going to read out a little bit of this handout. I worked on it all last night for you. um, the biggest thing about storytelling or any kind of performance is you just have to do it. You just have to do it, right? Stop, like Steve Pressfield says, stop letting resistance prevent you from doing it. It's better that you go up there and tell a horrible story where the entire audience has fallen asleep um, than avoiding going to do it, because you'll hopefully learn not to make them fall asleep next time. Um, okay, 2 key words for storytelling, either said out loud or insinuated, are because and suddenly. Whoops, I spelled suddenly wrong. Uh, because this is the platform. This is the details. You can say or do anything as long as you justify it in a reasonably plausible manner. If your listener is trying to understand what's happening or where it's happening, they're no longer listening. That they're now thinking about what they're like. Well, if she's telling me that this happened, where was it? What happened? Right. So we want to give them just enough detail so that they are not thinking backwards where you're trying to tell a story. So because is about giving them information so that they can follow it. Suddenly. Suddenly is the tilt. It's the plot. You want the story to be exciting but not predictable. Rather than saying, this was going to happen, you want to say, this happened and here's why. Right? So you want to find those little bombs that you can plant in your story to make the audience go, oh. I'll read out just a couple other things. So does that make sense? Because and suddenly. Another way to think about it is until we know what the character wants, if you're telling a story, we we don't know what the story is about. Until we know what the stakes are, we don't care. So that's another way of thinking about it. If you're just telling a story, and if the story is just about you, this is what happened to me. We have to know what is it that you wanted, and then why is that important? If it's not important, why the heck are we listening to that story? I have 10 tips, um, but I want you first, before we go into that, before we go into the stories, can you tell me, and you can type it into the chat, what makes a bad storyteller? What makes a storyteller who is unenticing? I think we could say boring. Too long, nice. Right? You can give us details, but we don't need all the details. Meandering, rambling with no point, great. Too much detail. Lack of emotion, lost the thread. Anything else? No surprise, yeah. you can't connect with the main character of the story. Now, in Quirk-e, do you mostly tell like true stories, like is it, or do you tell fiction? You go, there's a person named Steve.
Mostly we write memoir.
Right.
So it's not necessarily completely accurate, but but
Is
it's
that by design or by forgetfulness?
a little of both. Yeah.
Yeah. I've now, because I'm up there now. I often will start to tell a story and then I go, oh wait a minute, no, I think that happened at the Olympics, right? It's like I know it happened, I just can't remember where it happened. All right, I'm gonna go. What we'll do is I'll do tip 1 and tip 2. Then we'll pull a name from the hat and we'll have our first storyteller. After we do 3 storytellers, I'm going to show you 2 quick clips of 2 other storytellers, and then we'll do our last 2 storytellers. So, tip number 1. Put the listener in the story. As much as possible, tell the story in the present tense. I looked around and I suddenly noticed that there was a bird on the tree, and it looked like it was looking at me. As opposed to, I once was walking down the street and there was this bird in a tree and it looked like it was looking at me. Put them in the story. I'm in the present tense while I'm telling the story. Let me just find my notes. Try to use all 5 senses. There's actually 6 senses, 7 senses. Help them. What did it smell like there? What could you touch? What could you see? What sounds could you hear? What could you taste? And I'm just going to do a share screen if I can find it. You can also, where's one of the words I'm looking for? There we go, this one. The 7th sense. Proprioception. Has everyone heard that word? It's the unconscious perception of movement and spatial orientation arising from stimuli within the body itself. A 7th sense. And the other one, vestibular. That is about balance. So that when we talk about the 5 senses, we actually have 7 senses because we as human beings have a sense of balance. So when you're telling a story, put them in it. Bring it into the present tense. Give them the feeling of the story. The other thing, and related to that, you can give them also the physiological feelings of emotions that you felt in the story without telling us the emotion. Instead of saying it's a sad story, right? I'm telling you a sad story. If you go, I could feel my breath becoming shallow as I was thinking about, right? Or my blood was boiling. I was turning red, as opposed to I felt angry, right? So describing the physiological changes because of the emotion. Number 2, show, don't tell. Describe actions the character is doing that reveal what kind of person they are. You can even use a prop or 2. I did a talk recently for an organization called Get Inspired, and I came out on stage with a what do you call it? A dinner tray. I showed it to the audience and then put it aside. And then I did my talk, and of course some of them had long forgotten about the tray. Others were right away going, well, what's he going to do with that tray later? And then when I told the story that involved the tray, I went and retrieved it and used it as I told the story. So using a prop. So show, don't tell, just and put the listener into the story by using present tense. Before we go to our first storyteller, does anyone have any questions, concerns, or comments, or even pushback against either of those 2 things? Cool.
If you're
Yeah,
writing memoir and
Yeah.
the story is true, you're usually writing in the past tense. Is that an issue?
Well, no, but as much as possible. And I'm going to show you a clip later on of Spalding Gray, and you'll see how he sets up the story in past tense and then jumps to future tense once he's in it.
Okay.
Or not future tense, present tense. Future tense would be wild. I had no idea what was going to happen. Right. So you can say, I was 3 years old, and I remember my mother telling me never to take that path. But today I did. I looked around and I could see. So see how it just suddenly shifted into the present tense. And that will pull the audience into the story, and they will feel what you feel as you feel it. But if you say, I felt this, it holds them at arm's length. Does that sort of make sense?
It makes sense. I'd have to rewrite the story I'm about to use, though.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you did it on a laptop, so you can just go.
Yep.
Oh, I froze. I froze for a second. Sorry. I'm not at home, so I'll freeze every now and then because I'm using the school Wi-Fi because I teach at 1:30. So I thought better to be in the building so I can just quickly get to my class. Any other questions about that? Okay, let's hear our first storyteller. So Cynthia, I'm going to reach into the hat, and you're going to change who is the spotlighted person. Okay, the first person is, oh, Cynthia, it's you! Dun, 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 dun. So highlight yourself. And I'm going to make some notes, and I'm going to set a timer.
Okay, well, I do want to say first that I originally tried to write this story in present tense, and I changed it to past tense because it's about me at a much younger age. So I will go back and try doing it in switching into present tense, but I probably can't do that for today.
No worries.
The other thing I just want to lead with was that both of my parents were masters at Toastmasters.
Oh, nice. Nice.
I will try not to be like them.
Yeah, I think that they help people, but I can almost always tell a Toastmasters person because they just have very rigid rules, and we are much more. Sorry, I digress for a moment, Cynthia. We are much more enamored with people being authentic, and Toastmasters is about being formal, right? And that's why it's shifted.
When my mother passed, we discovered her index cards that were her cue cards for a couple of speeches that she gave that were clearly very formally prepared. Won't do that. Okay, here goes my story. I've given it a title. It's called Going to Safeway with Nettie. Returning a loaf of bread to Safeway with Nettie was one of the most embarrassing experiences of my life. And to appreciate that, I guess you need to picture me and Nettie. So I'm 34 years old, and I am determined to be an exceptionally good community health worker. And that means following the lead of the disabled elders to maintain their independence at home in the community. And in Nettie's case, this means that I escort her to go grocery shopping at Safeway on her scooter. Now, Nettie is close to 80, and she was never supposed to get a scooter. Everyone predicted that she would be a reckless driver, and she was. And we never figured out how she managed to get through the forms, the applications, the subsidy, the delivery of the scooter, because she didn't seem to read or write English well at all. And she was so hard of hearing that she had great difficulty answering the phone of the door. But one day, the scooter was there and she was raring to go. And I was supposed to be the solution to her dangerous driving, as though I could somehow control her by running behind her or yelling, "Watch out." You may have gathered by now that Nettie was a very headstrong person. And I figured this out the very first time that I arrived at her place to help her have a shower. On the seat in her bathtub. She had just returned home after months away, having surgery and rehab, getting her leg amputated. And her balance was still very poor, especially as she was walking on her prosthetic leg with the foot turned backwards. Fortunately, she was eager to bathe, which is unlike many of the clients who I had to really cajole into personal care. And I had just finished setting up the bath bench on top of the tub and running the water into the tub. So I turned to use my trained technique to help her transfer safely. And in the blink of an eye, she jumped from the bath bench into the water below. And she began rolling and splashing around gleefully. When I recovered from my shock, I whipped the bath bench out of the water and out of the terribly tiny bathroom so that she wouldn't hit her head and knock herself out. Now, I know that she had not paused for a second to consider how the hell she was going to get out of the tub at the end. And there was absolutely no way that I was going to lift her. But I'll just say that despite that, we both lived despite the slippery soap and the water splashed all over, and we didn't get injured. So you can imagine how not eager I was to deal with Nettie's impulsiveness in the busy traffic at Broadway and Commercial Drive. I wasn't so much worried that she would get run over as that she would bulldoze others and to make them get out of her way, especially in the aisles of Safeway. So my plaintive cries of "Watch out! Please, please watch out!" were for the other customers, because I knew that Nettie wasn't heeding them in the slightest. I heaved a huge sigh of relief when she bought a few items and put them in her scooter basket and sped home without any actual collisions. And I was out of breath keeping up with her, but we made it. And in the kitchen, Nettie grabbed a fork and began punching holes in the plastic bag around the bread, and then announced, "Oh, we have to go back." I had raced behind her and be the ineffective escort on this perilous journey all over again. In Safeway, Nettie buzzed up to the customer service deck, and with one look, the worker there, her eyes narrowed, hardened, and she sighed. I guess she'd already tangled with Nettie. Nettie yelled in a very, very loud voice, "This bread is stale! Give me another one!" I think the worker knew, just like I did, that Nettie had bought that bread only 20 minutes before. And she might not have known that Nettie never even opened the bag or took out a slice or felt it or tried to eat it. But she could see, just like me, the date on the bag of bread said today. I tried to avoid eye contact with the worker. I tried to take a step back from Henri Nettie. I tried to let my name tag show so that nobody would think I was Nettie's granddaughter. And Nettie just kept yelling, "Give me another bread! This bread is bad!" I wasn't clear how the holes she poked in the bag were supposed to prove that it was bad. But thank heaven, the long-suffering customer service worker ran to the fresh bread baked daily stand at the far side of the store, grabbed another loaf, and placed it in Nettie's scooter basket. Nettie returned home with her 2 loaves of identical bad bread. But as you can see, I still carry the embarrassment at being an unwitting accomplice to her heist of 2 loaves for the price of one. Thank you.
Nice. We could do these kind of claps, right? Deaf claps, so that because they're visual, they're very good for Zoom. Good job. A couple notes. These are just my opinions while listening to the story. If you were going to work the story again, is one of the things, and you'll see it in my notes here. Picture me. You said very, very early on in the story. Picture me. This using words like picture me or see yourself here or put yourself in my position, but then you want to make sure that we see that picture. So make sure you're describing. I'm there in my uniform with my name tag, ready for a day's work, right? And in front of me on a scooter is a woman with one leg. That was other tiny little thing is at one point, Cynthia, you did air quotes. Air quotes are almost always used as sarcasm. Oh yeah, you could say I love him. Or you could say that that's fresh. And you did it. We wanted to help people have unassisted living, so it sounded like you were mocking it, right? And if that was your intent, great. But I was like, I think what she's saying is she's reading from a brochure. Uh, 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 oh, nice. Thanks, Chris. But I think when you watch the tape, you can just double check to go, where did I put the quotes? That's a very funny website, by the way, of people on signs putting quotes around words that thinking it means emphasis, but it actually means sarcastic. You have such a great story here. One of the things that I would do is play up the drama a little bit more. The reveal that she only had one leg is quite exciting. Because of course you can even say, oh, did I not mention that? Right? Or not. But I think it's kind of neat to put her on the scooter, show that she's banged into something already because she took a corner too wide, as opposed to she's a reckless driver. Describe what she's doing that is reckless.
Okay.
Right? And then we'll get she's a crazy driver. The thing that you want to do, yes, I wanted to know that too. Did she take the leg off when she has a bath? Right? Did she hand it to you? Did she sit down on the bench and go thunk and hand you her leg? Because I totally, as Lori said, I needed to know if she still had the leg on when she got in the tub. Okay, so tell us what she did that was reckless rather than tell us that she was reckless. You can also do some act outs. So we'll talk about this in the next 2 points that I'm going to say. When you were talking of when you did.
Well, I have a question about that, David.
Yeah.
So my telling the story about her jumping off the bath bench was my attempt to show how reckless that she was. So should I say that earlier in the story before I tell the story about nobody wanted her to have a scooter, but she got one anyway? That was to emphasize how determined she was.
Yeah.
That was to emphasize
I think it's just,
she was.
yeah, I think you could craft it so that we don't. When she jumped off the bath bench, I didn't get the sense she was being reckless, is what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know. Like, so if I turned my back to put her leg down so I could help her into the water, but she had already jumped in. Right? Or something like that. Something so that we get that. I don't know if anyone else got that sense. I didn't get Also because I was the caregiver for my mom, she was constantly sort of moving herself. So I think you might just have to set it up a bit more.
Okay.
Like, this is what I do. I have to lift her from under the shoulders. This is what my training was, and I lower them into the tub or
Okay.
something.
Well,
And then
I guess I'm kind of making the assumption that people understand that if a person has a bath bench, that's because they can't sit in the tub.
yeah,
But
I
not
wouldn't make
everybody
that
does.
assumption.
Okay.
I wouldn't make that assumption.
Okay.
I'll just say a couple other quick things that I just jotted down. Yeah, I really think revealing that she has the one leg and then go back to her. So there she is driving the scooter. So now we go, holy fa. She's driving that with only one leg now, right? So she's already a little bit out of control. It's a great story. The pounding the bag full of holes makes us go, what's going on? Had you ever been with her when she did something like that before?
And
No.
I still don't know why she did it. I mean, that
Right.
was just like the listeners do not understand why she's doing this. I never understood why she did it.
Nice. We have to move on because we're going to run out of time, and I want to get to the other points and stuff. But the other thing with when you talked about, I cried out plaintively. Plaintive is an interesting word because plaintive is like, look out, right? And I think you can actually show us how you. I was racing behind her. Get down! Look out, lady on a scooter. So you're putting us in the story as you were actually doing it. Might again make us get excited. I love that if you tell us early on that you're wearing a name tag, right? You go, sticking my boob out so that people can see the name tag, so that they don't think you don't say the word boob, but sticking my chest out so people can see the name tag. We can go, oh, okay, right. I forgot she had that. Sigh of relief. I think you could even show us that emotion. I'm going to get that into the next thing. You can just go, and there she was. Tomorrow would be another day, or something. Can we have another round of applause for Cynthia, please? A show of applause. That's such a great story. I think you just want to move some stuff around a little bit.
Thank you.
And lovely twist with the demanding extra bread. All right, my next 2 points. This sort of feeds into what you're talking about. Put yourself into the experience. Why did you want to tell the story? Where is the excitement and the real experience? Put yourself into the drama, and you won't even have to memorize the text because you'll remember it. You'll be reliving it for the audience, and they will be experiencing it too. Maybe when she jumped up to get the bread, she used the same agility that she used when she got off the bath bench. Number 4, what is the surprise at the end? What do you want me to take away with them with this story? What is the thesis statement, the moral? Why did we go on this journey with you? And you can get extra bonus points if there's a call to action. In your case, I don't think there's a call to action in your story other than you should care for people or not assume they're frail. Maybe, but I don't think there's a call to action in your story, but the point could just be, I hope I have her energy and her foresight when I'm her age.
I see. For me, kind of the situation was I was professionally obligated to help this person, in my view, rip off a loaf of bread.
Nice. Yes.
This
I did my job well.
My sense of morality.
Yes. My job was to serve and protect. And I did. Well, aiding and abetting. Nice. So that's 2 and 4. Great stuff. We're gonna. Any other questions, Cindy? Do you have before we move on to the next person? Okay. And I've set my phone up so it won't go The sleep won't go to sleep. Okay, our next storyteller. Oh, we have 20 people now. It grew. Is from the Magic Hat. Is Lori Rudlin. Are we for time? Yeah, we're doing good.
Okay. Okay, hello everybody. Okay, the title of my story is Gas or Electric. It takes 4 minutes to read. My father was a great believer in personal independence, self-reliance, standing on your own 2 feet. When I got my first car at the age of 17, my dad gave me auto repair lessons. He was a train mechanic with CN Rail. The lessons started with these words, gas or electric. Since every car I ever had was old, they always had problems, and it was my job to isolate the area of the problem. The lessons came with a gift of my own toolkit. Under the heading gas, I was to unhook the fuel line from the fuel filter, suck out the gas, taking care not to swallow any, and see if there was any impediment in the gas flow reaching the carburetor. Under the heading electric, I was to unscrew a spark plug, engage a passerby, and get them to turn on the motor, while I held the spark plug close to the engine to see if there was a spark when the engine was turned on. If there was, the electrical function was probably fine. Both of these tests were helpful, but I was not fond of either of them. I'd have to say I disliked the spark plug test the most. One sunny day in spring 1968, my 1957 pink Vauxhall sort of coughed its way to the side of the road, and I knew it was time to do the dreaded analytical tests. My father had made it clear. He would only help me if I reported whether it was gas or electric. So I got out of the car in my miniskirt and bent deeply into the engine with my legs flailing in the breeze and unhooked the spark plug. My legs waving out of the engine acted like bait and brought a new set of problems. Helpful men. More of a nuisance, really. I knew what I wanted to do, and I just wanted to get on with the tests and find a phone. But when the men stopped to help, I had to be polite and endure quote unquote suggestions. You have to understand that at this time the male ego was very highly thought of, considered to be quite fragile, and to do anything to harm it was severely frowned upon. Therefore, I had to be polite and smile widely at the most ludicrous suggestions of what might be wrong, and even stand idly by while the more aggressive took over and busied themselves under the hood of my car. When I finally got the opportunity to continue with my tests, sometimes the helpful men listened, sometimes they didn't. In any case, I tried to tactfully continue without doing irreparable harm to their egos. With regard to my Vauxhall, I asked the helpful man or hailed a passing pedestrian to start the car and perform the spark plug test. And aside from having a small heart attack when the spark jumped, the test worked. The car had spark. I coughed and sputtered on the gas line test, and in fact, there did seem to be an impediment in the gas flow. I was able to pump the fuel filter a little, and that got me going again. So I said goodbye to the helpful man, who didn't help at all, just slowed me down, and drove off. However, the problem continued, and I was to be found flailing about with my legs in the air, getting runs in my pantyhose about 5 more times before I was able to take the car to a garage. This was because my dad had done a once-over and could find no problems in the engine with the gas flow, but he finally decided the problem might be in the gas tank. He came with me to the garage, and we explained the problem. Dad thought they should empty the tank, and in his words, blow it out, or some such technical term. They did, and it didn't fix it. But one day, about a week and a half later, I was driving along, and a passing car hailed me as they were going by and pointed at my gas tank. So I pulled over and had a look. Hanging out of the tank was a length of spongy rubber, possibly from a hose. I decided I would take the car home and engage my dad in this mystery. My dad was amazed. He started to pull the spongy rubber, and more was extracted. It was definitely a hose, and we got about 3.5 feet, with about 8 inches by 1 inch missing from the total area. Dad figured someone had tried to siphon my gas, got caught, and then just pushed the entire hose into the gas tank and ran for it. We went back to the service station and showed them the hose, and they were also amazed. None of us could ever understand how it came to be hanging out of my gas tank. But to my relief, that ended the saga of the faulty fuel line, and I didn't have to do the gas or electric test until my next car, and that was a nightmare. For your information, I'd advise against a Fiat.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Nice little punch at the end there with the Fiat. Good stuff. How did that feel? Oh, we lost your voice.
It felt okay, but I couldn't see anybody's face because I was reading.
Nice. Well, I think we were listening, so you can watch the recording later. Um, so this is such a lovely story. And there's a couple things that I would say if you wanted to rework it, because I think it's a really lovely story. Same thing. I think you can, again, bring us into that world. We don't get a huge sense of who your father is. We just know that you have a father, and he had, right? He had these particular things that he wanted you to do. You could give him his voice, right? My father would say, "Well, what is it?" And I told him, "It's gas." Right? So, what did your voice sound like when you were that age? Um, when you get to the spark plug, now this could just be me. This is a little directorial, but for me, because I only drive a little bit, I always just get freaked out about things that make electricity in a car. Like if the battery's dead and you have to tap it to get it in, I go, but there's gas, right? Will it not explode? So I think that even if you let us know the dangers of working with the spark plug, right? And maybe what flashed into your head before doing it. And then I tested it, right? So that we're like, oh God, well, I don't think she died because she's here telling us the story. There is this guy, Martin Dockery, I think it was. He told a story about swimming in the ocean. I digress for a moment, but he so brought us into the story. And he talked about being surrounded by jellyfish. And he brought us so into the story, you couldn't help but in the audience think, oh God, did he die? And of course he didn't, because he's there telling the story. But he brought us so into the moment, right? So, anyways, the spark plug. You did this two wonderful things that I think you've only scratched the surface of. You described what you were wearing when you got out of the car the first time in my mini skirt. I would love to know more about what you were wearing to help set the time zone. Right? You don't have to say this was the fashion at the time, but the fact that you said miniskirt, right? Without making it that women are vain or walking down that route, right? But you could just sort of go, my platform heels, my miniskirt, and my peasant blouse. And I went around to fix it. Because later on, you get out of the car again. Yes. And when you got out of the car the second time, I wanted to know what you were wearing. Right? What are you wearing now? Right? And it would be fun, even if you don't remember what you were wearing, pick another clothing style from that time. This would be a part where you're lying a little bit because you obviously wore clothes, right? So what was another thing that was a fashion of the time that when you were going out, that you would put on, right?
Okay.
I just think they're very fun. Also, the other part that was really, really fun was when you talked about male ego. You can even use a little bit of sarcasm, because of course nowadays we use the term male privilege, but we didn't use those terms then.
Well, male ego wasn't male privilege then. It was more than male privilege because you had to cater to it. Male privilege, now you don't have to cater so much. You had to cater to it. And by the way, that's a true story. That entire story is true.
Oh, I gathered that. You can see. So I think you can play with that a little bit more, and you can maybe take us into the moment where. Again, if you're taking us into the story and out of the story, oh, I'm frozen again. There we go. Sorry, I'm at the school, so I'm using their Wi-Fi. You can take us into it, right? I listened to him because that was what it was expected. I had to hear everything he said, or something, right? And then just look at the audience and go, right? If I were the woman I am now, I wouldn't have done what I did then, right? because where I was and what I was doing. So you can bring us a little bit more into that world. I think there's something quite interesting about male opinion or maleness, right? Um, we have just a few seconds left. I'm making the clock be more done there. Yeah, that was my biggest thing. I think that whole story can be much more exciting if you keep dropping us into the story, right? When you tell it all in the past tense as a remembrance, which is totally fine, but you're holding us at arm's length.
So keep taking it into the present tense.
Yeah. So it was time to look at the car. All right, Dad, what is it? Well, and then do the dad's voice. And even if you're not a great impersonator, right? If you're like, I'm not good with, you can just have, when I'm the daughter looking to the dad, my dad was a little taller than me, so I'll look up. And when I'm the dad, I'll look this way. What you got to do is this, right? And you can even give voice to that motorist. You got a thing sticking out your gas tank.
Right.
Right? What did they say and how did they say it? Right? And that might even be fun. Sorry, we're at time with you, but that might even be fun to have the person say it.
Right.
And none of us know what's sticking out of your tank. So I got out wearing my platform heels, my flare pants, right, and walked around. And there was this giant garden hose, right? So then we have this mystery. What the heck is the garden hose? Right? So yeah, it's a fantastic story, and I think you have all the pieces there. How does that feel, Lori?
That feels good. Thank you for your help.
Cool. Another round of applause for Lori, please. Okay, I'm going to quickly show you a couple clips, and then we'll quickly get to our other storytellers, and I'll get to other notes. I won't do notes this time. We'll just go to another storyteller, but I'm going to show you these quick clips. This is a woman. Now, she's doing a one-woman show, but she's doing a one-woman show where she does act-outs. Her name is Gemma Wilcox. Does anyone know Gemma Wilcox? She's been to Vancouver a couple times. She's British. And the hook that she found in her storytelling is as she tells the story, she plays all of the characters in the story, including the inanimate objects. So we'll just watch 2 seconds of her watering a plant, and the plant is judging her. I guess she got that sense from her own anxiety. It's like, oh, I feel like the coat rack is staring at me and judging me. And so she then gave voice to the coat rack. So here, I'll just show you that real quick. It's only a couple seconds. Here she is. My screen's a little bit bluey, so hopefully it's okay for you. Okay.
Wait, another night in, just me.
Oh, know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change one more setting. New share, advanced. I'm going to do computer sound so you can hear it better. Sorry about that. Whoops. Hello. There we go. Back to here. Hopefully that'll work. Okay, try that again.
Another night in, just me and my shrubs. Shrub! Shrub! How can you confuse this fabulous foliage with shrubbery, darling? I am a calla lily, but as I've told you before, you can call me Kevin. I left everything. For what? Now where their girlfriend, don't start moping now. So you left your house, your husband, your cat and your hamster for your sexy man friend, and now he's in demand. God, you humans can be so boringly monogamous. Come on, don't be so possessive, you'll see him soon. Now let's live it up while we can, girlfriend, life is good. Ding dong. Oh, cue mysterious visitor.
There you go. So she plays the shrub, and she plays, and you'll notice that her character, when it's her in the story, doesn't hear the shrub. Like the shrub talks to her, but she doesn't talk to the shrub, except like if she would talk to a plant. So when the shrub says, I said, call me Kevin, she never refers to the shrub as Kevin. Because she can't hear, it's a shrub. It can't talk. Just jump over to this lady. Let's see if I can get to it from here. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to click on that. I meant to click on this. So this is Lily Tomlin. And this is, we'll just watch the first little bit of her Miss Sweeney story. Does anyone, I can only see four of you right now, but some of you might be very familiar with her Miss Sweeney story.
This is my favorite monologue, so I don't want to overdo it. I'm going to do it because it's, well, it is classic, but. Oh, that's what you think. All right, so here we go. You ready for me? Oh, no, you don't have to respond to me, honestly. Except in your hearts. Okay. It's the first day of school. I talk to myself as I walk. This year I gotta buckle down. The second grade is serious business. I'm not wearing pigtails. My hair has been pin curled, frizzy on the ends, parted on the sides, and held in place by a red plastic two lovebirds on a stick barrette. A vinegar rinse gives it red highlights and it bounces as I walk. My new dress is blue and white checked with a white piqué yoke, embroidered with cherries. I feel so attractive in this outfit. That just this morning I've said to my mother, Mama, if I die while I'm still a kid, will you bury me in this dress? My new school bag slung across my chest bangs between my elbow and my waist.
Okay, and I won't go much further. So, is there, just turn on your mics just for a second. Does anyone know this monologue that she does? It's
Yes, yes.
yeah, it's quite lovely.
It
It's
is.
it's and it goes about. It's an 8-minute monologue, but it eventually goes. And there's people, because it was on her album. There's people who can recite it word for word. And when she was in Vancouver about 10 years ago, she changed one word, and you almost heard the audience gasp. That's not how it goes, right? We know this one. The story is about her falling in love with her teacher, her second grade teacher, and how beautiful she thought she was, and then talking about pursuing her.
And how she didn't have much in common with a bunch of illiterate sixth graders or something.
Oh yes, that line. Yes, yes, she has nothing in common with a bunch of illiterate sixth graders. Okay, and I'm just going to jump to one more person. Let me see if I can find him. Spalding Gray. We'll watch this whole story because it's 2 minutes long. This is him dealing with being a cheap drunk. There we go.
So I desperately wanted to fill up my little bottles. I carried these around. I was carrying these little Smirnoff bottles around. I had 4 of them, and they start full, and then they get empty. And in fact, I've been carrying these around with me since 1967, when I first started drinking under the table in New York City, just pouring drinks under the table and saving money that way. Really, I never got caught, and from the highest restaurant to the lowest, really, from the Rainbow Room to Burger King, never got caught. In fact, I saved enough money to buy a Soho loft pouring drinks under the table. Get your 4 bottles, or 2 bottles if you want to start with 2, or even start with 1, and get it out in the morning, and get your big half-gallon, and get a white plastic funnel from Woolworths for 59 cents, and go down, fill up your bottles in the morning, like that. You're all set, Catherine. Ladies, you can put 4 in your pocketbook. Guys, you can put 2 in either side pocket, and you're off to your busy day in your fancy restaurant at night. Now, what happens in any American restaurant as soon as you arrive? What do they give you? Ice water. Lots of ice, and you have a perfect setup there. And all you have to do is drink the water down and leave the ice, and then everything's set to get the vodka bottle out under the table, provided that is, you can keep the water boy away from the table. No more water. No more. No, just leave the ice. I'm going to be working with it throughout the evening. Thank you very much. Then you have to get the bottle out. Now, to make sure no one notices what you're doing, you have to begin to talk very passionately with the person across from you. You have to make something up. This is a difficult part for me. Oh, I don't know. You make up something really important, like, say, talk about a film script or an affair, right? And you go, no, sir. No, I know they were married then, because I happened to be, no, I was at the wedding. And she did not. That's crazy. Never got caught. There
you go. Oh, we won't watch the commercial. Nice. Observations with those 3 quick clips of different people telling stories. Questions or comments?
Well, I loved how Lily described in such great detail her outfit. And
Right?
it was so perfect.
Yeah, well, and then she even does the point of it. It was so perfect that she said, "If I die, can I be buried in this?" Right? Which you kind of go, "Oh, that's so morbid." Right? Lori, back to you really quick. Like, if you again, why did you? Why were you dressed in the miniskirt on this day? Were you on your way to a date, or were you on your way to a lecture, or were you on? You know what I mean? Like, so that could be stuff that you can think of too.
Okay.
It's like, this is I was in the car, yes, but I was going somewhere because cars are taking us somewhere. And then you revisit it the second time. Other observations just watching those three.
There was a lot of actions.
Yeah. The Spalding Gray one's lovely because he actually shows the bottle. And you see how he drops you in and out of the present or the present tense and into past tense. No, stay away. No more water. So then what you have to do is you have to, right? So he's constantly dropping us in and forward, right? Lots of hand actions. Yeah, their enthusiasm in telling the story. Anything else?
They're just they're very, very different personalities, all three of them. And they're all so vibrant. Their personalities explode. It's gorgeous.
Gemma Wilcox, it's hard to find stuff from her. As you can hear, she's from Britain. She also does this lovely thing where when she puts herself into the other characters, she's often giving voice to her own anxieties. Only now it's a coat rack judging her. Right? Or it's the cat saying, "You're being silly." Right? So she's found this great sort of storytelling technique that she developed into a one-woman show. She'll sometimes act them out too. I distinctly remember she did the fire. She was like, "You don't know what you're doing. You think you're right." So she was acting as the fire was talking to her about her. Any other observations before we go to our next? Speaking of hand actions. Cool. Let's go to our next storyteller. Reaching into the magic hat. It's Dawn! Dawn! Trying to show it. All right, let me get my paper ready, sir.
Well, I don't have a title for this, so.
Oh, well, okay, someone else will go then. No title, no story. How come I'm still pinned now? That's crazy. Can you unpin me so that it's just on? No, apparently not. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. And action.
All through my youth and young adulthood, I owned used cars with faulty defrosters. You know what I mean. On a cold morning, your breath clouds the windshield and you have to use a rag to wipe while you're trying to steer at the same time. You can only see through a slot about 3 centimeters wide. Maybe you roll down a window or open those little wing windows. Remember those? So to blow air across the inside, but it never worked. So I felt a certain smugness when my husband John and I could finally afford a brand new car with a brand new defroster. All through the cold, foggy spring and the crisp, damp fall, the defroster performed perfectly. But then winter set in and our luck ran out. We had to park the car outside because we had no garage and it was cold. One morning I started her up to go to work and the defroster made a terrible straining noise. No airflow. I tried to turn it off and on, I adjust the vents, I listened carefully to see where the noise is coming from. Then suddenly a puff of smoke came out and it emitted a foul smell, like a burning motor, maybe, I don't know. Damn, here we go again. I checked our warranty to see if I could get it fixed at the dealer, but of course the warranty had just expired. So I took it to a local garage. They said they would have to disassemble the entire dashboard to get to the heater and vents. I decided to go ahead and pay the $500. The verdict? One of the hordes of field mice that live in our pasture found its way into the heating system and was caught in the fan where it died. The fan wasn't damaged, however, so the garage only had to clean the vents. When we got it home, we tried to locate every possible entry point and block them up so it wouldn't happen again. Well, the defroster worked fine for a couple of weeks. Then the foul smell came back. Somehow the critters got back in, drawn to the warmth. John took it to the car into the garage for another cleaning. And when he pulled in, he told the guy, "I think I have mice in my heater again." As they talked, a gang of tiny rodents ran out from under the car and scattered in all directions. The repair guy smacked his head and said, "I think you're right." After cleaning the vents, he advised John when he got home to pack every crevice in the engine compartment with mothballs. Yes, mothballs. Well, that did the trick. Who knew? Mice don't like mothballs either. Luckily, the shop didn't charge us an exterminator fee.
Nice. That's again a great story. I just think there's just a few little things. How did it feel? First off?
Even just listening to what you were saying earlier, I would probably make some changes. But I thought, I don't. It's okay.
It's a lovely story. Just a couple things. Yeah, so just drop us into the experience more. Just drop us into it. It's so rich. Words are tricky. You said youth, so we instantly jumped to like 6 or 8 years old, and then you talked about a car, so we had to readjust to go, oh, you mean youth like 16 to 18, right? So you might want to say young man. When I was a young man, right, then we won't jump down to 6 years old. Right?
Okay.
So just be careful with words, because the audience is always trying to listen, and we're logic making creatures, so we always try to get to the ending before you get there, right? It sounds like it was your husband who took the car in the second time, so you weren't there, so you're a little free to make it as dramatic as you want now, because you weren't there. So for example, when the mice ran out, they could have run over both your husband and the guy's feet. They were scattering in all directions, running across their feet. I think you might have mice. Give voice to that guy, too. I think you might be right. There was a line there. This is a line. When the mouse is murdered, I think you should start with there was a murdered mouse before explaining where it came from. Because if you explain where it came from first, we're going to know it's a mouse. Right? So you just go, I'm going to put the horse before the cart as opposed to the cart before the horse. And then the line can be, unlike the mouse, the fan wasn't damaged. Right? So, and you can maybe even show us what the mouse looked like. Right. There you go. At the top of the fan, and at the bottom of the fan, his tail. Or something like with the mouse ripped in half. Right. You can get quite horrific with that. Right. So that could be also your trauma. Like when there's another smell, you don't want to take the car this time. I don't want to see another disgusting mouse massacre. And the other one that was in there, and then we'll get some insight from the peoples. 2 other comments that I made. Wing windows. When you said remember these, you're assuming everyone in the audience had those. right? So if you were to do this at the Flame or Story Lie, right? This is a kind of good story for Story Lie with a little bit of, you know, brushing up, because people might go, really? But Wing Windows, rather than saying remember these, you could say they used to have on cars these little windows that opened up. The premise was to do this. Some of you might remember these, because then there's others who are like, I have no idea. I teach college age kids and I make references to stuff that they have no concept of. Right? And you're like, oh yeah, okay, you were born in the year 2000. Right? $500. It's going to cost $500. You could also set up some drama with that. Is that a lot of money to you? Is that not a lot of money to you? And what were you going to do with that $500 that you can't do now? Right? So that actually leads into our next 2 points on this handy sheet of 10 things. But yeah, I think there's some drama around the $500. And again, it doesn't have to be like a paragraph, but you just dropped it was going to cost $500 and we don't know. It appears to us, I think, and I'm speaking for everyone here, that it was significant enough that you had to mention it by the number, but then we don't get what the significance was. Does that sort of make sense?
Yes, totally.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts. Just drop us more into the story. And yeah, you can make you could even build the story with suddenly a little mouse ran out and skittered across the floor. And your characters can just look at it. Then another. And then suddenly this family.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So there might be able to build some more drama with that. But I think that's a lovely, lovely story. Yeah, I think you have the makings there of something that could be quite thrilling. Any other comments first before, because now that you have all these things and we've watched some other people, Cynthia, yeah.
I wanted to hear you make the bad sound.
Oh yes.
I wanted to hear you imitate the sound.
Yeah, because you heard it, right? So bring us into the story. So I'm driving along and suddenly I hear. At first I checked the radio. Is it coming from that, right? Yeah, great. Yeah, the seven senses, right? Right? Then there was a smell. As a non-driver, didn't get it why the mice crawled in there till later in the story. Yes. Yeah. I think that works though, Nancy. Did it still work for you, even though you were wondering why the mouse was the mouse in there, or were you able to live with the question until he revealed it? Yeah. So sometimes sometimes it's okay to draw, like you have to say because, but sometimes it's good to have a little bit of mystery as long as you have a because later. So in Nancy's case, she was completely like, why would a mouse go in there? But then you told her the answer later. So another show of hands. Oh, I've frozen again. There we go. Another show of hands for Dawn. Okay. Going into the next ones. Number 5. If you can, when you're telling a story, plant cliffhangers as you go. Right? This could be with Dawn with the $500. So I had to figure out if I had to do this or this. Then the audience will be like, ooh, which one did you do? Right? And then you give them the answer. Build in questions that the audience will want answers for. That's also a cheap way of making them want to listen to the story. Because you're saying, I have to, so there I was, either going to go to college or go to Iceland. Iceland was beautiful, right? So we go, oh, so building cliffhangers. And again, with this one, but this is with all the stories. If you had an emotional reaction to the original experience of the story, make sure you have it again when you tell it. Stare in shock. Clasp your hand to your mouth. Make a big, goofy, happy smile. And you can actually hold that moment. They opened it up, and then there was a mouse. And another mouse. And then I realized it was the same mouse. Right? So we're seeing your horror. Right? Lori, when you're talking about the woman on the wheelchair, and there she goes. Right? Dropping us into what did it look like when she took off on the chair. Right? And you can hold us there for a moment because we're reliving what you lived at that emotional beat. Right? And you'll see storytellers do that a lot. Right? This is what I felt at that moment. Okay. So the two that we just did there, plant cliffhangers, and if there was an emotional reaction in the original experience, make sure you have it again. And you can actually hold it for a second, hold it for a moment. Okay. Our next storyteller, let's check the time. We're doing really good on the time. It is Marsha Arbor. Marsha Arbor, where are you? You're about to get pinned. Ooh, there's 21 people now. The mouse has joined us. There we go. Hello. Oh, you went away. You were there for a second.
Presume that's me. I'm Marcia Ablowitz. And
Oh,
my
okay.
sound is going in and out, so.
Okay, we'll do our best.
This is an old story. This is an old story, but I'd like some feedback and some ideas of how to. The skirt. It's a story. When I was a young kid, I grew up in the mine, the gold mine at Sheep Creek, playing all day in the forest and in the tailing ponds. But then I turned 6. It was time for school. My school clothes came in a brown package. I was very excited about this package, and the Christmas time, all kinds of good things came in these brown packages, books, toys. But this time, it was an ugly, itchy, heavy, plaid wool skirt. Mommy, I can't wear this thing. You have to wear it to school. Mommy took me to school. I was tripping over my skirt. It was terrible. I couldn't even walk in it. When I got home, I couldn't figure out what I was going to do. Then I got an idea. I got my overalls. I folded them all up and I put them in the sleeve of my jacket. On the way to school, there was a hollow tree, my fort. I went into the fort with that awful skirt. I took it off. I shoved it in a hole in the tree and I put on my overalls. Now I was ready for school. At school, I sat in my desk the first day and I did all the arithmetic. The teacher gave me a gold star. Very good, Mary Bell. You get a gold star. But Mary Bell, where's your skirt? You can't come to school in overalls. I just looked at the ground, down at the floor, looked at my feet. I didn't say anything. Mary Bell, I'm writing a note to your mother. You take it and give it to her. On the way home, when I went into my fort, I took off the overalls, I put on the skirt, and I took the letter from the teacher and I shoved it in a hole in the tree. By the end of the week, I had 5 gold stars in my math book. And there were 5 letters from the teacher in the hole in the tree. The teacher was very angry and she took me to my mother. Your daughter is coming to the school in overalls. No, she's not. I dress her every day in her new wool skirt. Well, she's showing up at school in her overalls. My mother was furious. Mary Bell, when your father comes home, he's going to spank you. I was so scared. I was shaking and hiding behind the couch when my dad came home. He took off his belt.
Ooh.
He said, Mary Bell, when I hit the couch, you scream really loud. Ah! 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 So I just kept taking my overalls and wearing them to school. And my mother tried and tried and tried to make me wear the skirt. But I was a good kid. She didn't want to spank me. So by grade 2, she gave up. She gave up. Thank you.
Nice. Let me just print out one more note. Okay, good stuff. I think just playing around with the drama a little bit, that's a really fun story. Rather than telling us intellectually that at 6 I had to do this, if you take us into the swimming and playing, and maybe talk about coming home one time, trying to get a particularly pernicious twig out of your hair, you suddenly saw the package and remembered that you were 6 now. And the package was likely the clothes that you were going to have to wear to go to school, right? So you can see the package first. Again, this is such an old, like you were so young then, you can embellish the story to make it a little bit more dramatic. Maybe if a package arrived from the post, right? You knew that you weren't supposed to open it until your mom was there. Maybe. Oh, bye, SG. I got a little bit lost, and it might have been because I was writing a note down, but I got a little bit lost about your mom taking you to school. Because it felt like I think, like I said, I might have missed a piece of the story when I was jotting a note, but it sounded like she was taking you by the hand to the school, but then suddenly you were able to go to school by yourself. So I just got a little bit lost. Did anyone else get lost? Was it just me? Where mom was in that story? Did it not, am I wrong? Did it sound like the mom was taking her?
Yeah, I agree with what you just said.
Yeah, so just clarify that part of the story. Because yeah, I totally just had this vision of her going, we're taking you to school in this dress. And then suddenly you were by yourself. I love the 5 and 5. Again, you can embellish this a little bit. This may not have happened. But I put myself in the school teacher's point of view. And the school teacher doesn't know the notes were hidden. So from the school teacher's perspective, she would probably assume that the mom isn't caring. Right? Because she's assuming that the mom has seen the note 5 times and not done anything. So when the teacher arrives, it's to chastise the mother for being a bad mother, and then discovering that mother never got the notes. And you can even do a fun little act out with both of them turning their head to look at you. Right? Because it just made sense to me that that was again just a logic thing. Like, how did the teacher know that the notes had been hidden, right? And you can add just a little moment of drama in that she came in to admonish the mother for allowing her daughter to show up in such a tardy way. Tardy and tardy. And two last little things. One is a question mark and one is just an idea. When Dad is beating the couch, you probably have to do the act out that he's whispering to her. Right? Because if Mom is listening in the kitchen, if he goes, "When I hit the couch, you scream," we're going to go, "How did Mom not hear that?" Right? So you might have to go, "Okay, when I..." So he looked at me. He had a stern look on his face. I was very scared. But instead of dragging me out from behind the couch, he whispered, "When I hit the couch." Right? So you can, just in the act out, make him whisper. Otherwise, we wonder why Mom didn't say. And the big question you have to answer is, I don't get why the teacher didn't care anymore. Did the dad go and talk to the teacher? And you might have to make that up if you're not sure why the teacher was so upset that she came to talk to your mom. But after your dad pretended to punish you and you still kept showing up in overalls, why did the teacher cease to care? It could be that the teacher had new battles, right? She had new concerns that were happening, that the girl in overalls were no longer a concern of hers. She wasn't paid enough to deal with that crap. Or it could be that, oh, I think she might be gone. Did she go? Her Wi-Fi, I can't tell. Or did the dad go and talk to her, saying, "Look, she's a good student. Let's not put anything that might stop her from being a good student." And so the teacher backs off. So it could be either of those things. But you need to solve that question. Did anyone else wonder why the teacher didn't care anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, the teacher just suddenly...
Masha says she can hear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pat. Yeah, and even if the teacher dragged you back home, it might be better to tell the story that you were at home when there was a knock on the door. We hardly ever had visitors. I ran to the door and immediately, "It's my teacher. Why is she here?" Right? Or you looked through the curtain and saw that it was your teacher. Good story. I think those are some things that might help bring us into it more. Oh. She lost audio now too. It's no big whoop. You can't see us, but we're going to do the hands anyways. Okay. I'm going to read out the next two. Act outs. Number 7, act outs. Use different voices to help put us in the experience. Make them say things they said the way they said it, the way you heard it. You don't have to be a great mimic, but if the person, you can just think of it being, well, her voice, you can use animals. Her voice was kind of sultry, like a snake, right? So you don't know what's happening, but it's all going to happen right now. Or the character might go, "I want you to get out of here, okay?" So what was it that you heard, and then recreate that for us. That can also be a source of comedy. There's a rule in comedy that you can follow, which is don't say funny things, say things funny. And if you know comedian Margaret Cho, she always does her mother in her routine. And she does the voice of her mother. And that voice is so funny. And she can even go, right? So she can go right into it. And audiences now get very excited when she's doing her mom. Right? So you don't have to be stand-up funny, but just giving voice to those characters. If this character is enough important enough to be in your story, and they said something to you that was impactful in your story, help us hear that. Sort of like when Lori was talking about we got to hear the voice of the woman on the scooter when she was back at Safeway the second time. But it might have been neat to have her voice dotted in. Like when she started up the scooter, did she go, yeehaw? Right? Or was she racing down the road going, out of my way? So, act outs, and if you had an emotional reaction. There's 3 left, but we will go into our next storyteller. Any questions or comments about any of those things? Please ask questions at any time. No? Okay. There's only one name left, and that is Val. I'll put my hat on now.
Hey.
Hi, Val. You're now talking to a prince.
This is written in past tense, and just from listening to this and looking at it and thinking of it into the present tense, it would be a lot better. But anyway.
So, and I promise I won't give you that note then, Val.
Okay, so this is a piece of memoir. I grew up in Aberdeen, Scotland. Union Street was the main street of Aberdeen, and Wanton Grant's, the main store, had gorgeous big windows full of interesting stuff, sort of like Eaton's and Hudson Bay here. I got off the bus there every school day before catching another bus to take me most of the way home. So I always spent the time between buses looking in those windows. One time when I was 7, there was a display in the window that included small, beautifully carved wooden dogs. I was glued to the window the first time I saw them, fascinated. I almost missed my bus home. I love dogs, and I couldn't forget the sweet little brown wooden dog facing me, tongue out and grinning, with her front paw up. She was so cute. I went to sleep that night thinking about her. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking of the dog, and I couldn't wait to see her again. When I got off the bus after school, I went into the store, found the inside of the display window, and stood there gazing at that dog inches away from me. I'd never taken anything from a store in my life, but suddenly, without even thinking, I grabbed her, shoved her quickly into my school bag, and walked out to catch my bus. Careful not to rush, though I was shaking and my heart was pounding underneath my school blazer and blouse. On the bus, I concocted my story. And when I got home, I told Mommy I had won her at school as a prize for reading. I was a good kid and a good student, so she believed me and praised me. And so did Daddy when she told him. That's the point at which I suddenly started to feel horribly guilty, a feeling I wasn't used to and didn't know what to do with. I was a thief now, and a liar, a bad person, and I was being praised when I didn't deserve it. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept seeing my Mommy and Daddy's smiles and the trust in their eyes. And as long as the light was on in my bedroom that evening, that little brown dog I loved so much was gazing at me, I swear, with a reproach in her eyes. She knew, even if my parents didn't, I didn't deserve her. The next day, after my sleepless night and a very tiring long day at school, with the little dog back in my school bag, I got off the bus, went straight into the store, and damn near got caught by one of the assistants as I put the dog back in the display window. Back with her pack, back where she belonged. I escaped back out on the street, and as I calmed down, I could breathe again. And as I sat in the bus heading home, I missed the little dog hugely, but not the reproach, and absolutely not the guilt. I never stole again. It was too expensive.
Nice. What a great story. Let me just write down my note here. Um, um, so, good stuff. Um, yeah, you could see as you already said before we began, dropping us into the story a little bit more. You can even have this action of acting out looking in the window. Right? Right. So we you just get that little double take of when you saw the little brown dog. Right? So all of it was wonderful. And then when you do that, we will go, what did she see? What did she just see? It was this little brown dog. Right? And you probably give us a little bit more description of it rather than just brown, like, so that we can understand why you loved it. You can embellish the story a little bit. This is point 10, where you went by the store a couple more times, and always the brown dog seemed to be looking at me. Like it knew that I loved it more than anyone else. Almost like it was pleading for, right? It knew that I knew how to take care of it. So on Friday, by this point, you went into the store and you just stole it. You can also raise the stakes of what your parents were saying to you that it ended up laying more guilt on you. This is my theater sports training, but whenever someone did something bad, you always try to raise the stakes by having other characters going, you are the best daughter. I have never seen a girl more smart, clever, or honest than you, right? And you can just feel like, oh no, they're giving me praise that I so don't deserve. And that was actually also in the time when people called people on the phone all the time. I could hear my mother talking to her sister on the phone. She's such a smart girl, so much better than your daughter. She would never, right, or something. So you're just like, oh my God, could they please just shut up? Because every time they talk, I'm feeling more and more guilty, right? Don't exaggerate, but I'm sure you have conversations in your head of when they did this, and you can just lay it on more. You can also give voice to the dog. In the dark, I heard. I miss my friends. Right? So it's even, and so the dog doesn't necessarily want to condemn you. It's just really lonely for its other friends. Maybe that's directorial, so you can choose not to do that. The dog and I go, I saw you looking at me through the window. I thought you were a good kid. I had no idea. Right? Oh no, the dog is condemning me too. Right. Oh, you talked about that night in your bed. Yeah, so one of the things you can do where you can really have some fun with this is describe the nightmare you had. Right? You were lying in your bed and suddenly the vision of something pink coming over me smothering me, and I realized it was the dog's tongue or something. So we can go into this child's vision of hell. Right? How old were you? Sorry? You were old enough to take the bus by yourself, so.
That's a little different in Aberdeen. I was 7, and I was either 6 or 7. I was very young.
7. So you're still really young. So yeah, it might be fun to kind of go, well, I certainly don't remember my dreams when I was 7 years old, so I can make them up. Right? Let me just see. You could do the sound of the bus. Oh, two things. At the end, you say this thing about I was almost caught. That's so anticlimactic. You didn't get caught, but can you put the dog back, turn around, and see that there's a security guard looking at you? Right? I showed him my hands. Like, I got nothing in my hands. The security guard looked to a teenage boy over at the jewelry case. So I quickly left. Because it could be that the security guard was just looking around and he just happened to land on you. But you're like, oh God, how long has he been staring at me? Right? And it turns out he wasn't staring at you. He just, you were a human being. He looked at you for a second. But I think that might be a little bit more like I almost got caught. It's not nearly as exciting as I turned around and there was a man in an ill-fitting security uniform staring at me. So we're like, oh good God, what happened? Right? And then he stared at somebody else. So I left. Right? And last thing, I love sort of like the comment about the Fiat. I think it might be even bittersweet that you took a different route home for the next month while that display was up. Like you didn't want to look at the dog again. Right? And from then on, for the next month, while the winter display was up, I caught the bus on Elm Street. So we kind of go, oh, she can't, that she did. I hate judgy dogs. Right? Because, of course, every time you would go by that window, it would be looking at you. Remember? So you don't have to go that deep into it, but I think there might be something kind of bittersweet that she just never went by that store as long as that display was up. I don't know. Does that sound doable, workable, interesting?
Not doable in terms of the actual place and my life at the time, but I see the point.
Well, and it could just be every time I went for the bus, I stared at the street instead of the window. Although I could feel the dog's eyes staring at me. Right.
That would be possible.
Yeah, because then you were still at the same spot. You just were deliberately not looking in the window. Right. But I could feel the dog staring me down in judgment. And as I got onto the bus, I said, but I put you back. All right.
Like that.
Lovely. Again, another. Okay, I'll read out these last ones, and like I said, I'll email these out so that you can get them. Good. You guys got stuff here that's really lovely. I imagine the rest of you do as well. Really lovely stories that are worthy of a bigger audience. Right. So check out. Story Lie, like I said, is happening in April So go to it, and then if you want, come up to me, remind me. I was the person you saw on Zoom on Quirk-e, and I can introduce you to Joe, not Joy, Joe. So you can just say, hi, I would love to be under consideration to be a storyteller at this. What's your next theme gonna be? All right. And the same with the flame. Teen angst and say wah are slightly different. Okay, here are the last things. Number 8, pull the audience into your story. Picture this. If you were there with me, you would see, right? Or you're standing on the corner when suddenly, coming around the corner, a scooter clips you. Right? So pull them into the story, particularly at the beginning when you're setting up the where and when your story takes place. Right? If it's winter, or if it was the day before July 1st, the fireworks. Right? Picture yourself here. It's like I said, the first, I think it was Cindy. Cindy, were you first? You said that, picture this. So using words to kind of get into their head. Next one. A key thing about all stories, or rather all effective stories, are about change. This is what pulls us to stories. This is why we like stories. This is movies, this is books. They're either about change or they're about what happens if you don't change. So if you want to tell a really effective story, you also can talk about the internal plot as well as the external plot. So this is the thing that I did, and this is how I'm a different person now because of what I did. So you have the external plot of the action and the internal plot. So a simple way to do this, if you're familiar with Twitter, is to figure out what the change was for your character. What would your character tweet before the incident, and what would they tweet after? Right? So it's, you know, Twitters are just short little statements. So you can just go, this is what they would tweet before, and this is what they would tweet after. Okay, that's their change. That's what the story was about. The change doesn't have to be profound. But you have the external plot and the internal plot. If you want to really pull the story in. I think someone said earlier in our last 4 minutes, when you can't relate to the character. But if you reveal a flaw or a weakness or something that they think is a virtue, but it's not a virtue, right? Or it's going to bite them in the ass later, the audience will completely relate, because we all know that we're all flawed. Even if we're being braggarts, we have those doubts in our head about the issues that we wish we could work with. And last thing, which I've already said several times, number 10, you can do a small amount of embellishment if you're not outright lying and you're not changing the story. But if it's more exciting to say a security guard was looking at you, even though you were saying, I almost got caught, or thankfully I didn't get caught, it's still saying the same thing. It's just saying it in a slightly more exciting way. Right? You don't have to say the president of the Hudson Bay store was standing there, because then you're like, whoa, what? Right? That's too much embellishment. And we have a couple minutes left. I hope you found that interesting and helpful. Do you have any questions or comments? No, all to you. You guys are wonderful. Let's unpin me and let's go back to gallery mode. And in our last couple of minutes, do you have any questions or comments or concerns?
This was really wonderful, David. Thank you so much. I got a lot out of it, and it was great to have a chance to really analyze the kind of the strengths and weaknesses in each of the stories. I think that it's a really effective way for a writer to learn. So thanks.
Nice, thanks.
I just wanted to say that in addition to the venues that you mentioned for storytelling, Quirky has some gigs coming up in
Oh,
which
nice.
we can do storytelling at those. And so I hope that the people who shared today and the people who didn't share today think about preparing our work to present at those times. Yeah, we're putting to use all the great tips that you've given us today. Thanks, David.
Cindy, it might be fun for you guys to brainstorm a concept of how to make it a game to do the stories. Like maybe don't do story, story, lie, because story, story, lie might be upset. One of these stories is not true. But I don't know if you want to, I don't know how to think of it. Like, even it could be something simple with the audience. Like in one of the stories, this word is going to be said. If you can identify later what story said it, you can win a prize, right? Yes, go, Farron.
Maybe it could also be if you have 5 readers, you could have readers, 2 of them telling each other's story, and the audience has to guess who
swapped stories.
Yeah.
Oh, that's neat. That's not story, story, lie. Yeah. So it's just finding the sport in the storytelling, right? Can we find a hook? I don't know. Maybe you guys are like sold out already. You're like, we don't need a hook. I like that idea of swapping stories though. There's 5 people and they have to figure out. So you all line up and someone has to go, you need to stand there and you need to stand there. Right? If you have a PowerPoint that says the name of the stories, you can switch them. That's very clever, Farron. I like that. I think it was Farron that said that.
Yeah.
Well, I put my email in there. So if you have any other questions, I'll put it in again. You can question me. I'm not very good with, I just suddenly remembered a guy named Robert Greene sent me something. I'm not very good with reading stuff. If you send me something and say, could you read this and tell me what you think? I probably won't. I'm very busy. And I have internet brain, so I can't read. So if you want, I'm totally fine with jumping onto Zoom with you for a second. And you go, this is my story. Do you have any thoughts? I would totally do that. You get me for 10 minutes. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity. You're lovely. I've worked peripherally with Quirk-e a couple times over the years, or I've introduced Quirk-e at least at times as an MC. You're lovely, and I'll send that email back to the organizers. Okay, bye.
Bye.
As we're leaving, I'm just going to tell people that we have a coordinating committee meeting this Friday. If you want to attend at 1 o'clock, if you want to attend, send me an email. We got lots of gigs and opportunities and material to plan and discuss. And who's our facilitator next week? It is me. Okay, send me stuff for the agenda. Thank you.
Thanks.
So